Okay. Coming to the next experiment, that is experiment number 9. Okay, yesterday experiment number 7 and 8 both were shared, and today experiment number 9, okay, this is a aim to analyze the living organisms in different water samples. Okay, to analyze the living organisms in different water samples. In that, the requirements and next procedure, and next you can see the observation here, observation. Okay, here we can see the observation, different observations: bacteria, protozoa, algae, and next we can see diatoms, larvae, and the nymphs of arthropods. Okay, here the diagrams are given. You can draw any 2 diagrams of each one. Okay, you can see here amoeba, paramecium, and next actinomorphis and giardia lambia. Okay, 4 diagrams are there. So among these 4 diagrams, you can draw any 2 diagrams like amoeba and paramecium, or actinomorphis or giardia. Any 2 diagrams of your choice, whichever you feel a little bit easy. Those, okay, any 2 diagrams. And from algae here, only 2 diagrams are given. Those 2 diagrams you can draw. If more diagrams are there, then we can draw only 2 diagrams. Okay, here you can see in diatoms we have got 4 diagrams. You can draw any 2 diagrams, whichever you feel easy. And in the larva and the nymphs of arthropods, okay, we have got total 8 diagrams are there. Any 4 diagrams, sorry, total 10 diagrams are there. Any 4 diagrams you can draw, whichever you feel easy. From these 10 diagrams, you can draw any 4 diagrams. Larva and the nymphs. And next, all these should be done. The writing part and the diagram should be done on the left side, because these are all comes under the observation. Okay, these are all the observations only. So all you have to do on the left side, from the starting from the observation. And next, finally we'll have the result. The result you have to write on the right side. So aim, requirements, procedure, result, we have to write on the right side, and observation and the diagrams we have to do on the left side page. Understand? The observation and also the diagrams. Okay, for protozoa, draw any 2 diagrams. Algae, there are 2 diagrams. The 2 diagrams you draw. And for diatoms, any 2 diagrams. And next, larva and the nymphs, any 4 diagrams. Simple. Okay, whichever you feel easy, those 2 diagrams you can draw. Here, no restriction. Understood? Anybody is having any doubt here? Say yes or no.
No, sir.
Okay. And next, coming to our topic. Already we discussed about the Allen's rule. Those organisms which are living in a colder climate, they are having smaller extremities, that is ears and limbs. Shorter ears, the external ear will be shorter, and the limbs are also very smaller in size. This is because to minimize the heat loss, because as they are living in the colder regions, okay, as these mammals are able to maintain their uniform temperature, so what they will do means, okay, they will reduce the heat loss by reducing their external structures like ears and limbs. This is called Allen's rule. And when you observe here, those mammals which are living in a colder, colder aquatic environment, Okay, though in those organisms we are finding a thick fatty layer under the skin, and that is called as the blubber, which will act as an insulator and reduces the loss of heat from the body. Okay, and next that is one adaptation. And some organisms possess adaptations that are physiological, which allow them to respond quickly to a stressful situation. Okay, that means some organisms will undergo changes physiologically so that they can change their body according to the stressful conditions very quickly. Okay, for example, if you observe, if you had ever been at any high altitude place that is more than 3,500 meters, like Rohtang Pass near Manali and Leh, you must have experienced what is called altitude sickness. That means if a person who is living in the plains, when he moves to a higher altitudes more than 3,500 meters, okay, when you move to the higher altitudes, gradually the availability of oxygen or the partial pressure of oxygen is gradually reduced. As a result, the person suffers from an altitude sickness. What is this altitude sickness? The symptoms include nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitations. That means the person will feel difficult in breathing, and next he'll find a certain fatigue, okay, and a heart palpitation. That means the heart start beating faster. This is because in the low atmospheric pressure of higher altitudes, the body does not get enough oxygen. Why this is observed means, when you move to higher altitude, the atmospheric pressure is reduced. As a result, the oxygen availability is also reduced. And but gradually you get acclimatized and stop experiencing altitude sickness. Okay, when you first encountered that environment, you'll find this nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitations. But when you live for a longer period of time, automatically your body get adjusted. Your body get adjusted and will not experience the altitude sickness. Even we can observe, if an astronomer wants to go to beyond the earth surface, he'll be given certain training by which he can adapt to the low atmospheric conditions. Because when we move away from the earth, we'll find the partial pressure is very low, or the atmospheric pressure will be very low. So you'll find certain problem with breathing. So to experience that one, they were continuously subjected to that environmental conditions, and later they are allowed to go to the space. The same we can see in case of higher altitudes also. When a person who is not supposed to live at the higher altitudes, so usually they live in the plains, so they'll experience high atmospheric pressure, so the enough oxygen is available. But when it moves to higher altitudes, there the atmospheric pressure is low and oxygen availability less, so altitude sickness is observed. How did your body solve this problem? That means how our body will change means the body compensates low oxygen availability by increasing red blood cells production. That means we can see very clearly, when you compare the number of RBC, the number of RBC between the people who are living in the plain and also in the higher altitude, we can find definitely there is a change in the number of RBC. we'll find okay, low number of RBC in the plane, whereas we'll find a high number of RBC, or okay, high number of RBC than the normal value in the higher altitude, the people who are living at higher altitude. Okay, because okay, when there is okay, that means we'll find in the plain region, we'll find a normal number of RBC, but if the same person, when he moves to higher altitudes, will find a higher number of high RBC count. This is because okay, because the to increase the affinity towards oxygen. That means if RBC, okay, that means in the plains, as the atmospheric pressure is high, so they can get a sufficient oxygen. But when he moves to the higher altitudes, the oxygen levels are reduced because of low atmospheric pressure. So to obtain more amount of oxygen, that RBC count will be increased, and the breathing rate also increases. So by increasing the red blood cells production, decreasing the binding affinity of hemoglobin, and by increasing the breathing rate, so the heart palpitations are increased, and the okay, by which the heart, okay, the breathing rate is also increased, so that they can take more oxygen. Okay, here we get is given very clearly. Many tribes living in the higher altitudes of Himalayas, okay, when you observe, find out if they normally have a higher red blood count or total hemoglobin than people living in the plains. That means those people, those tribal people who are living in a higher altitude, okay, they will be having a higher count of RBC and a higher percentage of hemoglobin also, when compared to the persons who are living in the plain region. Okay, that is how they are able to adapt to the changed environmental condition. And in most animals, the metabolic reactions and hence all the physiological functions proceed optimally in a narrow temperature range. In humans, it is 37 degrees centigrade. So in most of the organisms, the metabolic reactions will be working or will be occurring in a narrow range of temperature. Occurring in a narrow range of temperature. Okay, especially when you observe the birds, mammals. In that, we'll find very clearly the temperature is very narrow. Even a small change in the body temperature, we can see, in human, for example, if you take human, the body temperature is 37 degrees centigrade or 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Even a change in 1 degree centigrade, okay, will results in fever. Our body temperature will increase and our physiological activities will be reduced and will become lethargic, will not be active. Okay, when the temperature is optimal at 37 degrees centigrade, then only will be active and able to perform all the activities. Okay, that is the optimum temperature. 37 degrees centigrade is the optimum temperature. But there are some microbes like archaebacteria that flourish in hot springs and deep sea hydrothermal vents where temperature far exceed 100 degrees centigrade. How is this possible? Okay, that means here, that means even if you take archaebacteria, which are living in hot springs or deep sea hydrothermal vents where temperature is beyond 100 degrees centigrade. Okay, there are some bacteria like archaebacteria are able to survive with the high temperatures also. But how this is possible? How this is possible means because they are able to maintain optimum temperature at that temperature. That means all the metabolic activities will function only at that temperature. Even if the temperature is lower, okay, lower than that, 100 degrees centigrade, they are unable to survive. They are able to survive only at a high temperature. That means the metabolic activities that are taking place in these organisms are working at that high temperature only. Because of all these reasons, they are able to survive at that high temperature. And at the same time, when you observe, many fish thrive in Antarctic waters where the temperatures is always below zero. How do they manage to prevent their body fluids from freezing? How these body fluids are prevented from freezing means some chemical substances are dissolved in the water, which will decreases their melting point. As a result, the fluid will remain as a fluid condition. As a result, the animals which are living in that very cold water are also able to survive. Because of that, the organisms do not freeze. We can see the upper surface is ice and the lower will be water, and that the water will be having a temperature very less, but still the fishes are able to survive. This is because due to the dissolving of certain chemicals, which will reduces the melting point. As a result, the water remains as a liquid and helps in transportation in those fishes. Okay. And next, when you observe, a large variety of marine invertebrates and fish live at a great depth in the ocean where the pressure could be more than 100 times the normal atmospheric pressure that we experience. How do they live under such high pressures? And do they have any special enzymes? Okay, that is how do they survive means because those organs we can see, okay, when you observe the Animal Planet or National Geographic Channel, those organisms which are living at the deeper layers or at the bottom of the sea or ocean, they are usually flattened. The stingrays, electric rays, okay, and next all those, okay, most of the fishes which are living or most of the organisms that are living at the bottom of the sea, they are usually flattened. So that, okay, because of the high pressure that is prevailing in that environment, it makes that organisms flattened. Okay, and they are and such they are able to tolerate this high pressures. So organisms living in such extreme environment show a fascinating array of biochemical adaptation. So here we can see, okay, organisms which are living at higher altitudes, they are able to produce more hemoglobin and more number of RBC. And those which are living at low temperatures, okay, they are able to produce certain chemical substance which will prevent it from freezing. And those organisms which are living at high temperatures, they are undergoing metabolic activities metabolic activities at high temperatures, such that in that the enzymes are also active at high temperatures only. And those organisms which are living at a lower depths where high pressure is present, they are usually flattened so that they can reduce the pressure. And next, some organisms show behavioral response to cope up with variations in their environment. Okay, some organisms will move from here to there. That is called behavioral response. For example, desert lizards lack the physiological ability that mammals have to deal with the high temperatures of their habitat, but manage to keep their body temperature fairly constant by behavioral means. That is, they bask in the sun and absorb heat when their body temperature drops below the comfort zone, but move into the shade when the ambient temperature starts increasing. So we can see here, okay. For example, you can see very clearly the crocodiles. crocodiles, okay, we say they are amphibious, but not amphibious regularly. They are called, they are terrestrial. Okay, for some for a food purpose or some other purpose, they will be moving into the water. Okay, when you observe here, when they are living in the water will be a little bit cool. So regularly their body temperature will be cooling down. The water will take away all the heat. When the temperature, okay, of the body of this crocodile comes to very low, okay, the crocodile will move away from the water. Okay, and the crocodile body is covered by the scales, which acts as a shield. Okay, which works like a, okay, when you observe here, so what the, okay, it will like a solar shields, like whenever the body temperature is lowered, again they'll comes out of the water and they will expose to the sun and the body get heated up. And when the body temperature comes to normal, again they moves to the water body. When the body temperature is heating up, okay, increasing, again it will move into the water. Again, when the temperature is lowered, again it will move to the land. Like that, the desert lizards also. The desert lizards, what they will do means, okay, they will move to the shady region. When the temperature of the organism is very hot, okay, or very heat, okay, low, more than the, okay, optimal condition, then they will move to the shade. And when the temperature of the body of that lizard is reduced, again it will move, okay, bask in the, or it will be exposed to the sunlight and get heated up, and thus maintaining the temperature, because they don't have the mechanism to maintain uniform temperature. Okay, there is some species are capable of burrowing into the soil to hide and escape from the above ground heat. Okay. Okay, they will depend. Okay, those organisms which are living in the deep seas, okay, they will obtain the food material from the organisms that are fallen from the upper layers. That is the energy source. They can't, fishes cannot prepare their own food. No, whether the light is present or not, what is the use? Only the plants. Okay, that's why in the deeper layers, where there is no light, there we don't find plants. We'll find only animals. And these animals will, okay, depend upon the food material that is obtained from the upper layers, which can able to prepare their own food by photosynthesis, where light is available. Understood?
Yes, sir.
And next, coming to the populations, population attributes. In nature, we rarely find isolated single individuals of any species. Okay, that means in, okay, every organism lives in a groups. Majority of them live in groups in a well-defined geographical area. That means every organisms are restricted to a particular area. Okay, share or compete for similar resources. Okay, that means, okay, when you observe the organism belonging to one species, they will be belonging to one particular geographical area, and they share the same environmental conditions and the same, okay, same food material. And next, okay, and compete, that means some competition, because of as they are feeding on, they are depending upon the same, okay, they develop certain competition. Okay, compete for similar resources, okay, for the sake of food material or shelter or okay, for mate, okay, whatever it is, they're compete, okay, they show some competition. Potentially interbreed, that means the species, what is a species means? A species is a group of organisms which can interbreed, okay, and produce a fertile offspring. That is called potentially interbreed, and thus constitute a population. So those organisms which will share a common geographical area, okay, and share the common environmental conditions, and next compete for the same natural resources, and next able to interbreed and produce fertile offsprings. Okay, all these organisms together we are calling it as one population. Okay, here the interbreed refers to sexual reproduction. So although the term interbreeding implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals resulting from even asexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological study. Generally, interbreed means it refers to sexual reproduction. It does not refers to asexual reproduction. But here we are okay for population because those are okay, even if the organism is undergoing asexual reproduction, it produces similar individuals which will share the same and compete for the natural resources and all that. So that's why for ecological purpose, we are including the asexual reproduction also, because it is also involved in the production of similar individuals. Okay, here we can see some of the examples were given. All the cormorants in a wetland, rats in an abandoned dwelling, take wood trees in a forest tract, bacteria in a culture plate, and lotus plants in a pond are some examples of a population. Okay, so this okay, this because they all belongs to the same group. They can able to interbreed. They are sharing the same geographical area. They are competing for the same natural resources. That's why we are calling all these organisms as one population. Rats as one population, cormorants as one population, take wood plants as one population. Okay, and the bacteria that is growing in a one culture plate, we can also consider as one population. Okay, that is in earlier chapters we have learned that although an individual organism is the one that has to cope with a changed environment, it is at the population level that natural selection operates to evolve the desired traits. Okay, we already said very clearly that okay, the organisms, okay, the population or any organism will try to change according to the changes that are taking place in the environmental conditions. They try to adopt. This means here the natural selection operates to evolve the desired trait. That means what? Okay, that means whatever the changes that are made in the environment, according to that, the organisms will undergo changes. And those organisms which are best suited to that environment, those only will be surviving. And the other organisms which do not show the changes according to the changes in the environment, those will be removed from that environment. That is called natural selection. So the natural selection operates, okay, which organism is the best suited for that environment. That one only will develop the desired traits or desired character. Here, trait means character. So population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. Okay, so population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. Because evolution, that means the organisms, why a new organism is developed means because it's continuously undergoing certain changes, which is helping the organism to develop new characters, thereby developing into new species. So new characters are developed. Why? That is explained in genetics. And okay, development of new organisms from the existing, that one is explained in the evolution. So population ecology is linking ecology with the population genetics and evolution. Okay. A population has certain attributes, whereas an individual organism does not. Okay, that means if you take population and an organism, okay, population will show certain attribute. That means some components, okay, some concepts, but the individual do not have. For example, a individual may have birth and death. Okay, the individual have birth and a death, but a population has a birth rate and a death rate. Population has a birth rate and a death rate. If you take a population, we'll take it a birth rate and death rate. But if you take an individual, the individual is having birth and a death. We don't have birth rate and death rate with individual. Okay, but the population will be having birth rate and death rate. That is how many how many people are born in a year, newly born in that year. That one will comes under birth rate. How many deaths are occurred? How many deaths are occurred in that new year? That comes under the death rate. Here we can see in a population, these rates refer to per capita births and death. Per capita, capita means here year. Per year, how much how many births are taking place and how many deaths are taking place for a group of population. For example, okay, for 1,000 population, how many births are taking place? Okay, that one will give the birth rate. And how for 1,000 population, how many people are undergoing death? That one will give the death rate. So in a population, these rates refer to per capita births and deaths. The rates hence expressed are a change in number, increase or decrease. Okay, the birth rate or death rate may increase or decrease. We can say, okay, before independence, while we are studying about reproductive health, we come across before the independence and after independence. Before the independence, the birth rate is very less and the death rate is high. But after the independence, the population has been increased enormously. Why? Because of the reduced death rate and increased birth rate. So that means the rate of birth or rate of death may increase or decrease. Okay, with respect to members of the population. That means it is represented with the number of population that is present in that area. Here is an example given. Okay, if the pond there are if in a pond there are 20 lotus ponds, okay, lotus plants last year, and through reproduction 8 new plants are added, taking the current population to 28. We calculate the birth rate as 8/20. That means the newly added by the initial population. The newly added in that year by the initial population. That one will go 8/20, that is 0.4 offsprings per lotus per year. Okay, that means all the lotus plants might have not undergone reproduction and able to produce new lotus plants. But here what happened? We are taking the rate. That means at an average, okay, for one plant, okay, for one lotus plant, how many means? It is around 0.4. That one will give around 0.4. Okay, and if 4 individuals in a laboratory population of 40 fruit flies died during a specified time interval, say a week, the death rate in the population during that period is 4/40. That is 0.1 individuals per fruit fly per week. So there are totally 40 fruit flies are there. In that 4 fruit flies were died in that week. In that week, what is the death rate means? 4/40. That is equal to 0.1. That means for every one individual, 0.1 individual have undergone death. Okay, that is. These are the example. Okay, some of the